Let's talk about hand spins. We're going to do hand spins in our vertical plane and in our horizontal plane. I'm going to show you in 4 different positions and then we'll break it down. First, in our vertical plane, we're going to do in our front plane, side plane. In the horizontal plane, we're going to be above our head and with our hand facing down. Let's talk about these. They are 4 different positions, but the fundamentals of them all are almost exactly the same. Let's talk about what those are. First of all, when the hoop is spinning over your hand, you want it to be going across more or less the middle of your palm. For me, that is a space underneath my knuckles and above my thumb. If the hoop starts to get up your fingers, especially when you're not experienced with hand spins, you risk losing control and having the hoop just fly away. So a good place to develop control is kind of that really middle part of your palm. Another thing is, while you're getting used to hand spins, you don't need to keep an open palm. Eventually, the open palm is what you're striving for, but when you're first getting used to it, it can be very helpful to close your hand over the hoop every time it spins across your palm. Great way to really just get used to it, establish some hand control, and establish some kind of success data for your hands and your brain to know what keeping that hoop in control on your palm feels like. Okay, another thing that is true of all of the different positions that we'll talk about is that hand spins are interesting because you have essentially 4 options for every position that you're going to be in. And that's because the hoop can be turning clockwise in relation to you're looking at it, or it can turn counterclockwise. And it can do both of those things in your right hand or your left hand. So that gives a lot of different options to play around with. When it spins one way in one hand versus the other way in the other hand, or rather the other way in that same hand, that can feel completely different. So, and similarly, to have it spin in either direction on the other hand can be a big change. Some of them will be harder, some of them will be easier. You really want to get comfortable with all of them. All right, so those are the great truisms of all the different positions we'll be talking about. Now we'll talk more about the specifics of each one. We're going to start with the hand spin in front of us, which again looks like this. What am I doing with my arms and hand here? First of all, I am establishing a nice, strong, and stable position in front of me by having my arm in an L shape and my upper arm in close at my side body. That is going to keep me from chasing the hoop all over the place. I am establishing kind of the body knowledge, the hand and arm discipline of keeping the hoop where my arm is, where I want my arm to be, where I want the hoop to be, and not chasing it around. Secondly, I'm holding my hand also in an L shape, and that is with my fingers out and my thumb pointing up. Having my thumb pointing up is important because that's going to keep the hoop from running up my arm and hitting me in the face. Good thing to avoid. The motion that I'm going to use to keep the hoop going is kind of a gentle up and down, like a handshake. It's not some big crazy, circles that we're turning our hand, just a gentle up and down. When I start the hoop, I like to start it at 12 o'clock. So that's to say my hand is inside the hoop. It's an inside grip on the hoop. That means the inside part of the tubing is against my palm. And I'm holding the hoop at 12 o'clock if the hoop is a clock face that I'm looking at. I'm going to grip the hoop, give it a squeeze, and twist my wrist and hand to get that spin going. I could, as I said, also close my hand over the hoop every time it passes over my palm as I develop some hand control there. But it's just that gentle up and down movement. Some people find starting the hoop at 12 o'clock to be very challenging, especially when you're first getting started, because you just don't have the hand strength and the wrist strength necessarily to give that twist and give the hoop enough momentum to get started. In that case, try starting with your hand at 6 o'clock on the clock face. That lets gravity help you get the spin started. And again, you can be closing your hand over the hoop till that's comfortable for you, then work towards that open palm. In order to change hands, I'm going to show you this from the side. In order to change hands, a helpful way to do it is to slide the new hand up the wrist right next to the hand that has the hoop so that it's going to squeeze in just like this. Right? So I'm going to bring this hand in like this. On the side it looks like this. And my hands are together. I can either keep those hands together and keep doing the hand spins on both hands. That's something we call prayer hands. That's fairly difficult to achieve a lot of times for folks at the very beginning. A lot of times it might start out like that, not quite so much like prayer hands, but still it's excellent practice. It's an excellent stage to go through. As you get more and more comfortable, you can bring your hands together. But the other thing you might do is simply bring that hand in and drop the other hand away. Now you've changed hands. I'll show you what that looks like from the side. That's in prayer hands. Drop the original hand away. Show you that from the front. Prayer hands. Drop the original hand away. Okay, we can do all of these things, both directions, both hands. To change the direction of the hoop, you can give the hoop a little squeeze, send it in the other direction if you've found that strength, you've developed that strength in your hand and wrist. All right, we talked about the other vertical plane being in your side plane. That looks like this. What did I do there? I kept the hoop exactly where it is, but I changed the orientation of my body in relation to the hoop. So I am hooping in my front plane. I am going to turn my feet a quarter of a turn away from the hand that has the hoop. This hand has the hoop, so I'm going to turn my body a quarter of a turn away this way. I can do it at any point in the hoop's rotation, and it doesn't matter which direction that the hoop is spinning. So it looks like this. When I'm hooping in my side plane, my arm is still very much in that L shape and with my upper arm in close at my side body. Nice. If I switch hands, I can turn the other way. Okay. One thing about hooping in our vertical planes in either our front and side positions, front and side planes, as we get started, it can be intimidating as you're developing that hand awareness, that hand control with your spins, to have the hoop so close to your face. And that's a lot of the reason that folks tend to move their arm away from their side body. They want to be away from their face because it's a natural tendency, right, to protect ourselves from getting hit in the face. Try still to work through that anxiety. Hope you don't get too many hits in the face, but keeping that hand in close to your side body again is going to help you have the discipline, the structure of having a standard place for the hoop to be rotating in relation to your body, and find that hand control by closing your hand over the hoop. Very nice. Instead of going all over the place with the hoop, trying to keep your face safe. Two other positions. Everything else is the same. We're going to go above our head. We're going to go into halo. Some people call this lasso. A lot of these hoop moves have a lot of different names. Exact same hand position, except that now our fingers are going to be pointing up. Our thumb is still out. Even more important to keep the hoop from running down our arm to hit us in the face, as gravity is working against us in that regard. Unlike when we're starting in front of us, we don't have gravity to help us start the spin we have to have developed some of that, enough strength to give the hoop a squeeze to get it going above our heads. If your fingers are pointing up straight, then the hoop is going to be in a horizontal plane. You might think, oh, but it doesn't look like it's in a horizontal plane because it's drooping on the edges. Well, the drooping on the edges is not related to the position that your hand is in. The drooping down on the edges is related to how fast the hoop is spinning. I can flatten that out by spinning the hoop faster. If you go slower, then it's going to droop on the edges. Both of those are perfectly fine, and the ability to flatten that out is going to depend partially on how much speed you can control in a hand spin, and on how much strength you have in your hand and what the weight of that hoop is. All of this is different than if your hand were not, if your fingers were not facing up, if your fingers are pointing more diagonal out. Now you're no longer in the horizontal plane. You want to have your fingers pointing straight up to be in the horizontal plane. Everything else is the same about changing hands, giving the hoop a squeeze, the prayer hands. All right. Finally, we have the position of our hand facing down. In class, we call this stir the pot, but this is another move that has a lot of names. Everything else is still the same, though. Our palm is flat, our fingers are pointing out straight, and our thumb is going to form an L with the rest of our hand. Just like when we're working above our head, gravity is not going to help us start this. We've got to really just start it with that twist of the wrist. Looks like this. To be successful with stir the pot, you're going to need to be able to lean over enough to have enough clearance between your hand and whatever the size hoop is that you're using. This is more challenging with a larger hoop. Again, if your fingers are pointing straight down, you're going to be in a nice horizontal plane. Never mind if the edges are drooping, that you can change by speeding up the spin of the hoop. But you want to make sure you're working in a horizontal plane, even if the edges are drooping down, as opposed to if your fingers are pointing outward, then it looks more like that. Not really the same. You want to be really nicely in your horizontal plane, fingers pointing straight down. Try all these moves with both hands, both directions. Give yourself a lot of patience with hand spins because they are a fundamental building block of lots of things we'll do in hooping. So enjoy your hand spins. Good luck.